Okay, so we're going to continue in Moreh Nevuchim, so the Guide to the Perplexed by the Moreh Nevuchim. This is the introduction of the first part. He's going to quote from a couple different sources here: Psalms 143 verse 8, Proverbs 8 verse 4, and Proverbs 22 verse 17. It says, "Cause me to know the way wherein I should walk, for unto thee I have lifted my soul. Unto you, O men, I call, and my voice is to the sons of men. Incline thine ear and hear the words of the wise, and apply thy heart unto thy knowledge." Okay, so he starts out here in the introduction of the first part. The first purpose of this treatise is to explain the meanings of certain terms occurring in books of prophecy. And I personally think that this is like 50 chapters or 50 sections. And I think that this is referring to, in a certain way, to the Sha'arei Bina, the 50 gates of understanding. So some of these terms are equivocal, hence the ignorant attribute to them only one or some of the meanings in which the term in question is used. Others are derivative terms, hence they attribute to them only the original meaning from which the other meaning is derived. Others are amphibulous terms, so that at times, like doubtful, so at times they are believed to be unequivocal, are believed to be univocal, and at other times equivocal. It is not the purpose of this treatise to make its totality understandable to the vulgar, or to beginners in speculation, nor to teach those who have not engaged in any study other than the science of the law, meaning the Torah. I mean the legalistic study of the law, or halacha. So for the purpose of this treatise and of all those like it, it is the science of law in its true sense, or the science of Torah. So, or rather, its purpose is to give indications to a religious man for whom the validity of our Torah, or our law, has become established in his soul and has become actual in his belief. Such a man being perfect in his religion and character, and having studied the sciences of the philosophers and come to know what they signify. The human intellect having drawn him on and led him to dwell within its province, he must have felt distressed by the externals of the law and by the meanings of the above-mentioned equivocal, derivative, or amphibulous terms, as he continued to understand them by himself or was made to understand them by others. Hence he would remain in a state of perplexity and confusion as to whether he should follow his intellect, renounce what he knew concerning the terms in question, and consequently consider what he has renounced, that he has renounced the foundations of the law, or the Torah. So, or he would hold fast to his understanding, or these terms, and not let himself be drawn on together with his intellect, rather turning his back on it and moving away from it, while at the same time perceiving that he had brought loss to himself and harm to his religion. He would be left with those imaginary beliefs from the heartache and great perplexity. This treatise also has a second purpose, namely the explanation of very obscure parables occurring in the books of the prophets, but not explicitly identified there as such. Hence an ignorant or heedless individual might think that they possess only an external sense, but no internal one. However, even when one who truly possesses knowledge considers these parables and interprets them according to their external meaning, he too is overtaken by great perplexity. But if we explain these parables to him, or if we draw his attention to their being parables, he will take the right road and be delivered from his perplexity. That is why I called this treatise Guide of the Perplexed. I do not say that this treatise will remove all difficulties for those who understand it. I do, however, say that it will remove most of the difficulties and those of the greatest moment. A sensible man thus should not demand of me or hope that when we mention a subject we shall make a complete exposition of it, or that when we engage in the explanation of the meaning of one of the parables we shall set forth exhaustively all that is expressed in that parable. An intelligent man would be unable to do so even by speaking directly to an interlocutor. How then could he put it down in writing without becoming a butt for every ignoramus who, thinking that he has the necessary knowledge, would let fly at him the shafts of his ignorance? We have already explained in our legal compilations some general prohibitions concerning the subject and have drawn attention to many themes. Thus we have mentioned here that the account of the beginning, so Ma'aseh Bereshit, which is a mystical concept, the account of the creation, is identical with natural science, and the account of the chariot, or Ma'aseh Merkava, which is another mystical concept, with divine science. Is identical with natural science and the account of the chariot with divine science. And have explained the rabbinic saying The account of the chariot ought not to be taught even to one man, except if he be wise and able to understand by himself, in which case only the chapter headings may be transmitted to him. That is the Talmud Hagiga 11b and 13a. So he's going against what the sages taught, but sometimes there is needs to go against what is taught, just like, you can break Shabbat to save a life. So there's a greater good for something. So hence you should not ask of me here anything beyond the chapter headings. Even those are not set down in order or arranged in coherent fashion in this treatise, but rather are scattered and entangled with other subjects that are to be clarified. So he did mix things up on intentionally. So for my purpose is that the truths be glimpsed and then again be concealed, so as not to oppose that divine purpose which one cannot possibly oppose, and which has concealed from the vulgar among the people whose truth especially requisite for his apprehension. As he, meaning God, has said, the secret of the Lord is with them that fear him. Psalms 25:14. Know that with regard to natural matters as well, it is impossible to give a clear exposition when teaching some of their principles as they are. For you know the saying of the sages, may their memory be blessed, the account of the account of the beginning, so Maaseh Bereshit, ought not to be taught in the presence of two men. Now, if someone explained all those matters in a book, he in effect would be teaching them to thousands of men. Hence these matters, too, occur in parables in the books of prophecy. The sages, may their memory be blessed, following the trail of these books, likewise have spoken of them in riddles and parables, for there is a close connection between these matters and the divine science, and they too are secrets of that divine science. You should not think that these great secrets are fully and completely known to anyone among us. They are not, but sometimes truth flashes out to us so that we think that it is day, and then matter and habit in their various forms conceal it, so that we find ourselves again in an obscure light, almost as we were at first. We are like someone in a very dark night, over whom lightning flashes time and time again. Among us there is one for whom the lightning flashes time and time again, so that he is always, as it were, in unceasing light. Thus night appears to him as day. That is the degree of the great one among the prophets, to whom it was said, but as for thee, stand thou here by me, and of whom it was said that the skin of his face went forth, beams, and so on. Among them, so that is Deuteronomy 5:28 and Exodus 34:29. So among them there is one to whom the lightning flashes only once in the whole of his night. That is the rank of those whom it is said they prophesied, but they did so no more. Numbers 11:25. There are others between those lightning flashes. There are greater and shorter intervals. Thereafter comes he who does not attain a degree in which his darkness is illumined by any flashing light. It is illumined, however, by a polished body or something of that kind, stones or something else, that give light in the darkness of the night. And even the small light that shines over us is not always there, but flashes and is hidden again, as it were the flaming sword which turned every way. Genesis 3, verse 24. It is in accord with these states that the degree of the perfect vary. As for those who never even once see a light, but grope about in their night, of them it is said, they know not, neither do they understand. They go about in darkness. Psalms 82, verse 5. The truth, in spite of the strength of its manifestation, is entirely hidden from them, as is said of them, and now men see not the light which is bright in the skies. Job 37:21. They are the vulgar among the people. There is then no occasion to mention them here in this treatise. And I have to point out that that is the core statement of the book Bahir, Habahir, Sefer Habahir. And I have a playlist on that book. That's why I say he's a mystic, and I think he's a mystic of that school of thought. So that school of thought does not have the Kabbalistic tree of life. That school of thought has the Sephirot as concentric rings, almost like an onion. So with the Zimtzum piercing it. Okay, so I really think that he's a mystic. He's bringing out all these passages, and he talks about all these mystical passages. And again, that is the core verse of the book Sefer HaBahir. That is the opening verse. It says, know that whenever one of the perfect wishes to mention, either orally or in writing, something that he understands of these secrets, according to the degree of his perfection, he is unable to explain with complete clarity the coherence, even the portion that he has apprehended, as he could do with other sciences whose teaching is generally recognized. Rather, there will befall him, when teaching another, that which he had undergone when learning himself. I mean to say that the subject matter will appear, flash, and then be hidden away, as though this were the nature of this subject matter, be there much or little of it. For this reason, all the sages possessing knowledge of God, the Lord, knowers of the truth, when they aimed at teaching something of the subject matter, spoke of it only in parables and riddles. They even multiplied the parables and made them different in species, even in genus. In most cases, the subject to be explained was placed in the beginning, or in the middle, or at the end of the parable. This happened where a parable appropriate for the intended subject from start to finish could not be found. Sometimes the subject intended to be taught to him who was to be instructed was divided, although it was one and the same subject, among many parables remote from one another. Even more obscure is the case of one and the same parable corresponding to several subjects, its being fitting one subject and its ending another. Sometimes the whole is a parable, referring to two cognate subjects within the particular species of science in question. The situation is such that the exposition of one who wishes to teach without recourse to parables and riddles is so obscure and brief as to make obscurity and brevity serve in place of parables and riddles. The men of knowledge and the sages are drawn, as it were, toward this purpose by the divine will, just as they are drawn by their natural circumstances. And that's what I actually mentioned already. It's like it finds you, right? And when you're ready for it, it opens up just like a dam breaks and the water just passes through. Do you not see the following fact? God, may his mention be exalted, wished us to be perfected, and the state of our societies to be improved by his laws regarding actions. Actions, not beliefs. Right? Now, this can come about only after the adoption of intellectual beliefs, the first of which being his apprehension, may he be exalted according to our capacity. This, in its turn, cannot come about except through divine science, and this divine science cannot become actual except after a study of natural science. This is so since natural science borders on divine science, and its study precedes that of divine science in time, as has been made clear to whoever has engaged in speculation on these matters. Hence God, may he be exalted, caused his book to open with the account of the beginning, or Maaseh Bereshit, the account of the beginning, the account of creation, which, as we have made clear, is natural science. And because of the greatness and importance of the subject, and because of our capacity to fall short of apprehending the greatest of subjects as it really is, we are told about those profound matters which divine wisdom has deemed necessary to convey to us in parables and riddles and in very obscure words. As the sages, may their memory be blessed, have said, it is impossible to tell mortals of the power of the account of the beginning, so the work of the creation. For this reason, Scripture tells you obscurely, in the beginning God created, and so on. And again, these are concepts that are brought up in the Bahir. And that's, Thus, they have thus drawn your attention to the fact that the above-mentioned subjects are obscure. You likewise know Solomon saying, that which is far off and exceeding deep, who can find it out? Ecclesiastes 7:24. That which is said about all this is equivocal terms, so that the multitude might apprehend them in accord with the capacity of their understanding and the weakness of their representation, whereas the perfect man who is already informed will comprehend them otherwise. We had promised in the commentary on the Mishnah, which is another work that he wrote, that we would explain strange subjects in the book of prophecy and in the book of correspondence, the latter being a book in which we promised to explain all the difficult passages in the Midrashim. Maimonides uses here a subsequent term, drashot. So, difficult passages in the Midrashim where the external sense manifestly contradicts the truth and departs from the intelligible. They are all parables. However, when many years ago we began these books and composed a part of them, our beginning to explain matters in this way did not commend itself to us. For we saw that if we should adhere to parables and to concealment of what ought to be concealed, we would not be deviating from the primary purpose. We would, as it were, have replaced one individual by another of the same species. If, on the other hand, we explained what ought to be explained, it would be unsuitable for the vulgar among the people. Now it was to the vulgar that we wanted to explain the import of the Midrashim and the external matters of prophecy. We also saw that if an ignoramus among the multitude of rabbinites should engage in speculation on these Midrashim, he would find nothing difficult in them, inasmuch as a rash fool, devoid of any knowledge of the nature of being, does not find impossibilities hard to accept. If, however, a perfect man of virtue should engage in speculation on them, he cannot escape one of two courses. Either he can take the speeches in question in their external sense, and in so doing think ill of their author and regard him as an ignoramus. In this there is nothing that would upset the foundations of belief. Or he can attribute to them an inner meaning, whereby extricating himself from his predicament and being able to think well of the author, whether or not the inner meaning of the saying is clear to him. So with regard to the meaning of prophecy, the exposition of its various degrees, and the elucidation of the parables occurring in the prophetic books, another manner of explanation is used in this treatise. In view of these considerations, we have given up composing these two books in the way in which they were begun. We have confined ourselves to mentioning briefly the foundations of belief and general truths, while dropping hints that approach a clear exposition, just as we have set forth in the great legal compilation Mishnah Torah. So my speech in the present treatise is directed, as I have mentioned, to one who philosophized and has knowledge of the true sciences, but believes at the same time in the matters pertaining to the law, and is perplexed as to their meaning because of the uncertain terms in the parables. So we shall include in this treatise some chapters in which there will be no mention of any equivocal term. Such a chapter will be preparatory for another, or will hint at one of the meanings of an equivocal term that I might not wish to mention explicitly in that place, or it will explain one of the parables or hint at the fact that a certain story is a parable. Such a chapter may contain strange matters regarding which the contrary to the truth sometimes is believed, either because of the equivocality of the terms or because a parable is taken for the thing being represented or vice versa. As I have mentioned parables, we shall make the following introductory remarks. Know that the key to the understanding of all that the prophets, peace be upon them, have said, and to the knowledge of its truth, is an understanding of the parables, of their import, and of the meaning of the words occurring in them. You know what God, may he be exalted, has said, and by the ministry of the prophets I used similitudes. Hosea 12, verse 11. And you know that he has said, put forth a riddle and speak a parable. Ezekiel 17, verse 2. And you know that because of the frequent use of prophets make of parables, the prophet has said, quote, they say of me, is he not a maker of parables? Ezekiel 21, verse 5. You know how Solomon began his book, to understand a proverb and a figure, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. Proverbs 1, verse 6. And it said in the Midrash, to what were the words of the Torah to be compared before the advent of Solomon? To a well of waters, of which are at a great depth and cool, yet no man could drink of them. Now what did one clever man do? He joined cord with cord and rope with rope, and threw them up and drank, and drew them up and drank. Thus did Solomon say one parable after another, and speak one word after another, until he understood the meaning of the words of the Torah. Midrash on Shir HaShirim 1:1. What is literally what they say? That is literally what they say. I do not think that anyone possessing an unimpaired capacity imagines that the words of the Torah referred to here, that one contrives to understand through understanding the meaning of parables, are ordinances concerning the building of tabernacles, the lulav, and the law of four trustees. Rather, what this text has in view here is, without any doubt, the understanding of obscure matters. About this, it has been said, our rabbis say, a man who loses a selah, or a pearl, in his house can find the pearl by lighting a taper worth an isar. In the same way, this parable is itself is worth nothing, but by means of it you can understand the words of the Torah. This too is literally what they say. Now consider the explicit affirmation of the sages, may their memory be blessed, that the internal meaning of the words of the Torah is a pearl, whereas the external meaning of all parables is worth noting, is worth nothing. In their comparison of the concealment of a subject by its parable's external meaning to a man who let drop a pearl in his house, which was dark and full of furniture. Now this pearl is there, but he does not see it and does not know where it is. It is as though it were no longer in his possession, as it is impossible for him to derive any benefit from it until, as has been mentioned, he lights a lamp, an act to which an understanding of the meaning of the parable corresponds. The sages has said, "A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver." Here now an elucidation of the thought that he has set forth. The term mashkiyut, so meaning settings, denotes filigree, traceries. I mean to say traceries in which there are apertures with very small eyelets, like the handiwork of silversmiths. They are so called because a glance penetrates through them, for in Aramaic translation of the Bible, the Hebrew term vayashkef, meaning he glanced, is translated vayishtakeh, a verb form deriving from the same root as the word mashkio. The sages accordingly said that a saying uttered with a view to two meanings is like an apple of gold overlaid with silver filigree work having very small holes. Now see how marvelous this dictum describes a well-constructed parable. For he says that in a saying that has two meanings, he means an external and an internal one. The external meaning ought to be as beautiful as silver, while its internal meaning ought to be more beautiful than the external one, the former being in comparison to the latter as gold is to silver. Its external meaning also ought to contain in it something that indicates someone considering it what is to be found in its internal meaning, as it happens in the case of an apple of gold overlaid with silver filigree work, having very small holes. When looked at from a distance or with imperfect attention, it is deemed to be an apple of silver. But when a keen-sighted observer looks at it with full attention, its interior becomes clear to him, and he knows that it is of gold. The parables of the prophets, peace be upon them, are similar. Their external meaning contains wisdom that is useful in many respects, among which is the welfare of human societies, as is shown by the external meaning of proverbs and of similar sayings. Their internal meaning, on the other hand, contains wisdom that is useful for beliefs concerned with the truth as it is. Know that the prophetic parables are of two kinds. In some of these parables, each word has a meaning, while in others, the parable as a whole indicates the whole of the intended meaning. In such a parable, very much words are to be found, not every one of which adds something to the intended meaning. They serve rather to embellish the parable and to render it more coherent, or to conceal further the intended meaning. Hence, the speech proceeds in such a way as to accord with everything required by the parable's external meaning. Understand this well. Okay, I'm going to end the first part of this introduction here. He's going to start getting into some examples, distinct examples of phrases. He's going to describe the account of Jacob's ladder and the account in Proverbs 7, chapter 7, and he's going to go on. And I want to divide this up. So because this is already 20-some minutes long, but stay with me, bear with me, because when we get into this, it will start being very interesting. So, thanks for listening. Stay tuned.